Hi everybody and welcome back to Crafted by Corie. If you're new, I'm Corie. Welcome to my channel, and if you are returning, thank you so much for being here. You know you mean the world to me. I am super excited about today's project, so let's go ahead and get right on into the crafting. DIY number one. For this project, I have these two, I'm going to call them rattan wreath forms from the Dollar Tree, and I've got a smaller version and a larger version. I'm going to be connecting them together, and to use that, you could use wire, but I have this, it's kind of the paper wrapped wire that I got off of Amazon. I do have it linked in my Amazon store. If that's of interest to you, you can find that in my description box, a link to my Amazon store. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap this around. I'm also going to tuck the wire through some of the wreath form itself, just to try to provide a little bit more stability. And you'll see here, I'm just gonna kind of try and tuck it through the actual wreath itself, not just around it. So kind of poking it in between the, again, I don't know if this is considered to be rattan or if there's some other term that's to be used for this, but I'm kind of putting it in between the strands of whatever this material would be considered. So once I have that all set, I'm going to take some of my burlap ribbon that I got from Costco. This is my Kirkland's ribbon that I'm always talking about, and I'm going to tie a length of it around the neck here. I'm just going to make a knot. This is going to be a very simple way of creating a bow. These are going to be my little tails for my bow in a moment. And then I'll take another length of the ribbon and I'll create my bow part. So I'm just going to unravel this a bit, and I'm going to measure off a little bit of ribbon. I think if I had to guess, because you all know I tend not to measure things all the time, but I would say there are probably about 3-inch loops. So on either side of the center, I've got a loop that's about 3, maybe 4 inches. I did not want this to be too large, so I also did it until I had 5 loops on either side. I just wrapped it around and around, and now I'm going to notch the middle. So fold it in half a little bit to find the center, and then just put a little teeny tiny notch on either side to grab some more of my little wrapped wire trim. Not trim, but that's what I'm using to connect the bow. So you could also use a chenille stem. I just decided to use this because I was already using it to secure the wreath forms together. And then I'm going to fluff out all of my loops. I'm just alternating back and forth from left to right. And once I have that all fluffed up, I'll go ahead and use the ends of the wire, the paper wrapped wire, to go ahead and secure that on top of the knot that I created. And I did want this a little bit off center, so you'll see that it's kind of off to one side. You could certainly center this if you'd like. You can put it on the other side if you'd like. I've got mine kind of off to the right side of my little wreath forms here. Once I have it in place, I'm going to dovetail the ends, just folding that in half and cutting the ribbon at an angle. And you want the shorter part of the angle on the folded edge. So once that's done, I'm going to take a piece of burlap, and I folded it a little bit so that I could double up what I was doing. So I folded it here. I'm going to fold it actually again because I'm trying to preserve as much of my burlap as I can, and I also want to make sure that I've got the same shape and that it's kind of symmetrical. So I'm going to go ahead and cut here. I'm folding it over a little bit more because I was like, I don't need it to be quite that wide when I cut it, but going ahead and cutting an ear shape. So making our little bunny ears here. Once I have those, I'm going to take my wire, my paper wrapped wire again. I don't know if there's a technical name for that, but I thought at first I was going to weave it through the burlap, and then decided that that was just going to end up unraveling it and it wasn't going to be what I wanted it. So I set a piece of my parchment paper down underneath, and I am going to get my glue gun here and just put out a strand of glue. yeah, whatever, a bead of glue. And then I'm going to secure down my wire. And notice I did get my little finger protector. Be real careful when you're working with the hot glue. I have been known to burn myself pretty badly, so in this particular instance, I decided I really needed to be using the finger protector because I'm pretty much putting my finger right down on where the glue is as I try to get this all situated. So just be careful when you do that. So getting this all along the outer edge, I did not put it along the bottom, just along the two sides. And then I'll go ahead with my wire cutters and snip that off. And then I will do the same thing with the other one. But you can see here, I'm going to be able to gather up that little base to create that ear shape. So I'll go ahead and do the same thing with the other. And then I am going to kind of gather the bottom as I started to show you before. And I'm using a little bit of hot glue just to keep it in place and get the shape of the ear that I want. Doing that with both, kind of flattening them out a little bit. Going to use some more hot glue here, and then I'm going to secure the top, so the smaller of the two wreath forms. This is our little bunny's head. Just going to secure that on there. And then I've got these really pretty peonies that I've had in my stash for quite some time. I had gotten these off of Amazon actually several years ago. I had gotten several different bouquets of them, and this is the last one that I have, but I just thought that they were really pretty, and I like the color scheme with the burlap. So I had pulled apart my pick, true to form, right? And I'm just trying to figure out where I want to put these. At first I thought I was going to do a little fluffy tail with some Dollar Tree microfiber cloth. I have that kind of off, I guess it's a dust cloth actually. Or a mop dust head thing, but I decided I was just going to use the flowers instead, and that could serve as a little, not so much a fluffy tail, but it's going to be representative of the tail, right? Because it's obviously not a tail, it's three little flowers down at the base. But once I had everything where I wanted it, I'm securing it all with some generous amounts of hot glue. And just be aware that if your hot glue setting is on high, you might melt some of those little stems. So just be aware, you might need to help it a little. But let me know what you think of this. I am in love with it. DIY number 2. For this, I have a trash to treasure item. This is something I had in my stash that my sister had been getting rid of. I've got some Dollar Tree bowls there, a Dollar Tree little, I call it a puck light, and then a Dollar Tree piece of fabric over on the right there. I'm just cleaning up my glass piece with some rubbing alcohol. It's been sitting in my stash for a while. I'm going to be using just one of these bowls, and I'm going to take the puck light out and just make sure that it fits as I am anticipating it will in the bottom, and it was a perfect fit. So setting that aside for right now, I was just testing to make sure it was going to be able to twist and open to put the batteries in. And I'm going to grab my fabric out and get an idea of how much of this I'm going to need. It's clear to me that I'm not going to need the whole piece. I believe this is a 30-inch by 30-inch piece of fabric, but I determined pretty quickly I'm only going to need about a quarter of it. So I'm just making sure I know where I need to be cutting this, and it turns out I'm going to cut it right along those fold lines. So I've got my handy dandy scissors. I'm just going to cut out that bottom right hand quarter. So cutting that as straight as I can, keeping it nice and neat, and then I'll put the rest of my fabric off to the side, just folding it up a little bit, try and keep myself organized. And then I am going to find a center on the fabric with the bowl. Those fold lines came in super handy for that purpose. Now I'm going to grab some hot glue and I'm going to secure it in around the bowl. I'm starting with opposite corners. So I'll do the one corner, I'll go across, pulling it taut, a little bit more hot glue in there, and I'll just continue to do that around the bowl. So starting out with each of the 4 corners first to make sure everything is nice and secure. tour, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do to finish off the rest of it. Now there are a bunch of different things you can do with this. You don't have to do it this way. I had considered cutting it in a circle form and creating a seam, if you will, through which I would be able to thread elastic. So that is kind of like a shower cap, if you can think of what a shower cap looks like. And that could have gone on here as well, and that would have created pleats all the way around the little shade that we're creating in a uniform manner. But I opted to do it this way instead. So I am just creating these pleats at the 4 areas that are still open, so to speak. And I'm coming in with my hot glue and just making sure I'm securing those down. And I'm going to do that at the 4 areas in between where I had secured my corners. So just pulling the fabric out, making sure that I've got it about the same width for each of these pleats. And you can just play with it a little bit, and just going to go ahead and get it situated and glue that down again. Like I said, this is just one of many ways you could do this. You could also just start at one side and start gluing down a little bit at a time and go around the circumference. That's probably another way to do it. But this was the way that I decided to do it so that I could try to make sure everything was even. I went ahead and pulled off the little sticker back. I've got my little light turned on with my batteries in there, and just setting it on my glass piece to create a little lamp. I love how sweet and simple this is, but let me know what you think. And now it's time for a shout out, a timeout. So nice, Valerie. She used her permanent vinyl and then her infusible ink. Love it. And beautiful Rose. These are so sweet. Thank you so much for sharing. I would love to give you a shout out as well. If you have interest, please send me an email at craftedbycorie@gmail.com. DIY number 3. I have a Dollar Tree floor mat that we're going to be using, and then I have my Arteza paint markers. Now, the colors I chose to do this are representative of the colors I'm going to be using with chalk paint. I wanted to go ahead and get my letters drawn out, so I had a guide to follow. You are not going to be able to see these on camera. I am sorry for that. Maybe you can see them a tiny little bit, but as I use the chalk paint on them in a minute, you will see them much more clearly. For my little bunny designs that I'm drawing at the bottom here, you can actually see these much better with this particular color, and so you kind of get an idea of where I'm going with this. But you could certainly use stencils to do this. I opted to hand letter it, and obviously I'm painting it by hand here as well. Now, these mats take a lot of paint, so I am being super generous with the paint that I'm picking up on my brush. I am using more of a narrow brush though, because I want to keep my letters from kind of falling together too much. I had some rather long words that I was using, so I didn't want my letters to be too thick. I probably could have come back in and done the faux calligraphy with them. I opted not to this time. I'm not really sure why. It just didn't even occur to me. I was kind of just liking the simple font that I put on here. But as you can see, I'm going back in and filling it in here and there with extra paint. The color that I used for the welcome part was my Celery by Waverly. And this color is my Vintage Victorian. I believe this one is Home Decor. I'm trying to look at the bottle. They're both plaid products, and I am always trying to remember if my chalk paint is Home Decor or Waverly, because I confuse them because I have them all mixed in my drawer. But they're both fantastic products. I love them and use them all the time. But just filling that in, and then I'll go ahead and get my little bunnies filled in just a moment once I have all of my other words filled in. And for this one, I am using my plaster, and this is Waverly. I used a wider brush for the bunny bodies, and now I'm coming back in with a smaller brush for the ears, and even a smaller brush to create the little bows that I'm putting on them. On the right, I used agave. On the left, I used provincial, and the middle, I used lilac. And now this is silver lining that I was using to create little tails. Now I'm going to spray it with Flex Seal. One of my sweet subscribers told me about that to protect it. Let me know what you think. DIY number 4. Alrighty, for this project I have a bunch of little Easter eggs that my sweet subscriber Rose had sent me, and then I also have some leftover pieces of skewer from the Dollar Tree that I had cut down from another project. I'm getting out my drill. I'm going to find a drill bit that is the same size as my skewer piece so that I can kind of drill a hole through which I can insert my little skewers. So I drilled that, got it all cleaned up, stuck my little dowels in there, and I'm going to create, I guess, a banner of sorts, if you will. So I went ahead and I glued this down. I was thinking that it might be enough to support my little banner of eggs. It turns out that that did not work out quite as I had planned, so I did end up having to go plan B, but I'll show you exactly what I did. In the meantime, while that wood glue was drying, I came in with my white Adirondack chalk paint and I painted some of the letters that I wanted to use for this project. I got my eggs all lined up in the order that I wanted them, and then I started applying my sticker letters to my eggs. Now, if I had to do it again, I would have done this after I threaded the eggs together, because I was placing the bottom of these stickers just over the seam. These eggs open up to put little treats in. So it all worked out in the end. I was able to manage, but I would actually put the stickers on afterwards if I had to do it again. So I have this little green cord I'm going to be using. I was thinking I might be able to use a needle. It wasn't going to work, so that was why I ended up having to pop these open. So I was just very careful not to rip my little letters. So each of these eggs happened to have 2 little holes in the top of them, so it was perfect for what I wanted to do. So I just went ahead and threaded the string through each of the tops of the little eggs, just being careful with that sticker. I just kind of lifted the base of it, popped the egg open, threaded my little cord through, in and then out, and I did that all along, and then sealed up the egg again and pressed my little sticker down, and voila. But goes to show why I was saying if I had to do it over again, I would have put the stickers on afterwards. But once I had them all strung, I spaced them out, made sure that they were all nice and even, so with the same amount of distance between each. And I just think these are so cute. Now, I just was trying different things afterwards, and I couldn't really come up with anything that I was really loving at the time. I do feel like this project is a little unfinished, so I would love for you to tell me what you would do when you see the end product. I was thinking about maybe greenery or flowers down at the base, or maybe a little flower on top of each egg or something like that. But let me know what you would have done when you see the end of this. But in the meantime, I am attaching the cord to the top of my dowel, and this is where I'm starting to feel like, you know what, this is a little bit wobbly. I'm starting to put my thinking cap on and trying to figure out how I'm going to, what my plan B is going to be, because the dowel just was it was too much weight on the dowel and it was pulling it forward. So I'm going ahead and just securing the other end while I'm thinking about it, getting all of my pieces situated and together. And here I'm like, oh, I've got my egg turned around the wrong way. So my thought was, if I had that big part of the egg on the inside, it would help to support the whole thing, which it does, but it's the dowels and those connections to the base that is just too weak. There's not enough there to support the dowel, because those base pieces are super thin, as you can see. So I ended up pushing them down further through. And I've got this ruler from the Dollar Tree that I'm going to use as an extra support. So I'm pushing the dowel down in through. I'm also going to kind of pull it out at a bit of an angle to provide some greater support to the weight that's in there. So as you can see here, I'm kind of angling it. I'm pulling it through a little bit more. I'm making sure that it's not going beyond the ruler, because when it sits on the table, I want it to sit flat. But I'm adding a whole bunch of wood glue there, and then I'll take a stripe of wood glue down and then apply the ruler to that entire section, but not over the dowel. The dowel is coming down as far as the ruler. I'm gonna go ahead and clip that with my Dollar Tree clamps, and I'm going to use a little can of spray paint to help hold it up and in place so that it doesn't end up glued to my table. And then I'll go ahead and I'll fashion the other end the same way, getting that all glued and ready. And then I'll go ahead, and get the other end attached. I'll secure that with my clips as well. And then at this point, it was able to just kind of lean up against the paint can, and I was able to leave it there to dry. And once it was all dry, I was able to remove the clamps. And here are my little eggs. Let me know what you would do to finish this off, because again, I feel like it needs something more, but it's still super sweet and makes my heart happy. And leave me a comment, let me know what you think. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. I hope that you enjoyed the projects. If you did, please give me a big thumbs up, and remember to leave me a comment, because it really does help my video to get noticed by YouTube, and it helps my channel to grow. Thank you so much, as always, for your amazing support. I love you all. Until the next time, be well, be kind, and make it a great day. Thank you so much for watching. Take good care. Bye.